Hey guys, what's up? It's Jeff Winchester with the Catching Clinic, and I hope this video tonight finds you guys well. I know we're dealing with some troubling times right now, and you know, I have a bunch of friends who are on the front line trying to help out others during this whole coronavirus thing, and my heart and prayers go out to all of my friends that are out there doing their thing, trying to make us a lot safer for us so that we can get back to our daily living. But wanted to take tonight to maybe try to give you guys a little bit of reprieve from all the bad news that we're hearing all over the place. But you know, wanted to talk a little bit about a throwing methodology that if you're a coach and maybe you're working with some young players, or even if you're an older, more experienced player and you're looking to try to find a reason as to why maybe you're producing a specific result that you're producing, you know, maybe this concept or this methodology may be able to help you. It's not by any means an end-all be-all on how to throw. There's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of really good catching instructors that are out there. You can obviously YouTube anything really, and you're gonna find some good material. I know specifically in working with guys over the last 20 years, the information that I was able to acquire from being a part of 4 different professional organizations, you know, this is kind of a culmination of many of the different guys that I've learned from. And over the years, it has seemed to help with being able to get the concept of the throwing mechanics down for building a foundation, or even being able to decipher, you know, what might be going wrong and maybe finding in some areas where we can make some tweaks if you're an older guy, you know. Before we get started though, I really do want to thank Jack Creston with the Louisiana Knights for allowing me to come into the facility, the castle over here in Mandeville. I know they're shut down right now because of the quarantine issues, and but Jack's giving me an opportunity to come in here and perform this little video for you guys. So I want to thank him for that. Also want to say what's up to Knights Nation. Looking forward to getting a chance to meeting every single one of you guys, working with you guys. I know you have a ton of really great, talented coaches in the organization, and I'm excited to be able to get an opportunity to get around to each and every one of you guys. So looking forward to that. But without any further ado, let's get into it. And you know, one other thing too, if we make it all the way to the end of the video, hopefully you do, but I have a few little tips that might be able to help out as you continue to develop this methodology and use it in your practices. So the idea behind what we're trying to accomplish is called the straight line theory, right? And as you can see, I'm using this line right here as a visual reference. I know, you know, I'm a visual learner. I know many of the athletes that I've worked with over the years are visual learners, and so it kind of establish a visual when we're talking about what we're going to talk about. It's not necessarily a drill per se. It's more of an architectural perspective on developing the mechanics of a thrower. And the reason why that's important is because, you know, just like any architectural design, when an architect designs plans for a building, he'll hand it over to the builder, and the builder goes and puts it all together, right? He knows the foundation, he knows the depths of the foundation, knows where the walls are going to be, all the way down to the details, maybe an outlet goes, right? Or what is a plumbing wall, so on and so forth. This methodology that we're going to use tonight is actually a way of being able to break the whole mechanical process down so that A, we can establish a solid base, or B, we can kind of get an idea of where we need to fix certain things. So it all starts with understanding the idea of the straight line, okay? Whenever I work with any of my clients, the first thing that we always discuss is the quickest distance between 2 points. Once we establish that a straight line is the quickest distance between 2 points, it's important for us to identify where this line starts and stops, okay? So many times we've always heard coaches, when they're talking to their players about playing catch and throwing the baseball, hey, hit the guy in the chest, hit the guy in the chest. Well, it's an easily controllable area that we can help the guy who's on the receiving end be able to manage the baseball and move it to the next location, okay? So for example, and for demonstration purposes, we're going to identify the start point for this straight line, the center of the chest of the thrower, okay? And as you can see, my body is positioned directly over this line, right? So the number one thing we're establishing is that the straight line is the quickest distance between 2 points. Very simple, very elementary concept, but very powerful when used in the correct way. The second key note is if you see where the line is positioned in relationship to my body, it's in the center of my body. And that also is very important, okay? What does the center of something represent? Well, generally when I deal with my players, okay, if I tell them if I were to take you and cut you in half directly down the middle, in general, you'd be even on both sides, right? You know, you got one arm over here, one arm over there, half a nose, and so on and so forth, right? So the idea behind the line being in the center is the center of something represents the most balanced point, right? So if I have even amount of weight on a scale, right, what would happen is that scale would eventually do something where it levels out, okay? Or in other terms, balance out, right? So what we want to try to establish is the idea behind balance. Okay, what is really balance in the athletic world? Okay, balance in the athletic world is none other than being able to control your body. Okay, one of the greatest examples that I love using is when we're talking about NFL running backs, the good NFL running backs. You know, when they get hit and they don't go down and they keep going, they have great balance, which is to say they have great control over their body. So when we talk about body control and why that's important in the throw, it's important to identify what it is that our body is trying to control. So when we're throwing, our body is trying to control the ball, obviously. So the more control over our body, which is to say the more balance we have, the more effective of a throw we're going to wind up being able to produce, okay? So identifying a balance point, okay, a reference place to where I can operate, which maintains the most amount of control, is very important when it comes down to being able to reproduce, A, the mechanics, but also to get a very good, accurate throw, okay? So right out the chute, when we talk about this straight line theory, we're identifying two key characteristics of a very good throwing catcher, okay? And I'll even go beyond that to say it's more than just being able to apply it to catchers. It's really any type of throw in general on a baseball field. Okay, this straight line theory represents two key points, okay? Obviously, number one is you're able to get the ball from point A to point B as quick as possible. And B, it represents the balance point, okay? And when we have balance, we have control. And when you can control the outcome of a throw consistently, you're developing the second key characteristic for a good throwing catcher, which is accuracy, right? Okay, it does us no good to get a ball to a specific base if we don't have the ability to control said ball and be able to have it be managed by the receiver so he can put a good tag on it, okay? So quickest distance between 2 points and the ability to balance or control my mechanics as I work through them, okay? So right here we have the straight line. First thing that I'm going to do, and right now basically what we're trying to break down is the mechanics that we're going to use when we're just playing catch. Okay, we're down the line, it's pre-game, pre-practice, even if you're in the backyard throwing with your boy, throwing with your parents, whoever, being able to reproduce the mechanics is very key, okay? So what I like to try to tell my guys is establish a base about shoulders width apart for the sole purpose of being able to identify movements working to the center, okay? And that's what we're working towards, trying to have everything work to the center, all right? So I just caught the baseball, right? So what I'm gonna do now is I'm transferring it over into my hand. Now, as I'm going to transfer, you'll notice my hands work to the center, okay? I'm being very cautious to not have one side of my body invade the other side. Glove side's not getting beyond the center point, and my throwing hand is not getting beyond the center point. What we're trying to produce here is symmetry, because it's very important as we continue to go along to try to maintain the symmetrical motion of the throw so that we can establish proper timing, okay? So a couple things are happening all at the same time. My hands are gonna go to the center to make the exchange, okay? But as I'm doing that, I'm also establishing myself to the center with my lower half. So with my first jab step, I want my jab step to get to the center as my hands are coming to the center, okay? The reason why that's important is because literally that first step puts us on the path to being able to get over to second base. Well, in general, we're talking second base here, or the person I'm throwing to who is directly in front of me, okay? Truth is that this concept also can be used to throw into either of the bases, but for right now, in general speaking terms, we're talking about throwing to someone who's directly in front of us, and in general, for a catcher, it's second base, okay? So, two things are happening at once. Both my hands and my feet are working towards the center line, okay? At this point in time, I like to identify that the body is working in halves, the lower half and the upper half. And I use the analogy of two dancers dancing on a dance floor together. When the two move smoothly across the dance floor, generally what's happening is they are complementing each other with an appropriate step. One partner makes one move, the other partner makes an appropriate move to complement it, right? Our throwing mechanics are no different. The lower half is going to make a move and the upper half is going to make a complementary move so that both halves have a tendency to work together in a harmonious way, right? So we're working establishing that center point here, okay? Now, at this moment, what we want to maintain is our alignment, okay? Remember, we're trying to keep everything online. So what I like to teach, and of course, any of this stuff can be tweaked one way or another, but the way I like to try to describe it is that as I go to begin to separate, okay, what's happening is this foot, my my glove side foot, is going to be striding out forward, okay? Now, as that's happening, I'm separating my hands. And what I like to have happen is, I like to have my glove side go immediately straight forward towards the person that I'm throwing to. And I like my backside to travel straight back, okay? Both my wrists are traveling along the line, okay? One happens to be in a loading position going back. The other one happens to be getting me on line so that I can be in line with the person that I'm throwing to, okay? Now, as we continue to go on, we'll talk about some of the variances that I see with catchers with the front side. But for explanation purposes, we're going to have this front side glide straight forward along the line. Now, as these two hands are working, what's happening is I'm beginning what they call the scapular retraction, okay, which is the key component in being able to establish a good foundation, a muscular foundation for the rotator cuff in the arm to make a strong, accurate throw. Now, we can get into the details about scapular retraction, every muscle that is a part of all of that, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole right now because we're mainly focused on the mechanical component of the throwing motion, right? So we're working towards the center. Now, as we begin to separate, we're separating, but we're working along the line as we separate. And what I like to say is it's separation synchronization, right? Two components are working together at the same time to separate. And that is very, very important, mainly because at the moment that our front foot hits the ground, our timing should be that our hand is in the throwing position that it needs to be in order to fire forward, okay? So the way we kind of work on that mentality is that the way that I like to describe it is that when this lead foot breaks the zero barrier, and when I say zero barrier, that means even with my throwing side foot, as that foot begins to separate, that's when our hands want to separate. Because there are really three things that are separating and trying to be timed up all at the right time, okay? Obviously, we're trying to get this front side, the front foot, to our landing spot. We're trying to get the ball into a throwing spot, but in reality too, we're trying to get ourselves in a position where we're ready to throw with this scapular retraction here, so that the moment this front foot hits the ground, I can activate the trigger process, which is this front side pulling straight back along the line, coming backwards. And the reason why that's important is this, okay? The way that our bodies were created, what one side of my body does, the other side is going to do the exact opposite. If I were to walk up to you right now and push this shoulder down, the opposite side would go up. If I push this shoulder back, the opposite side would go forward. So whatever one side of my body does, the other side does the exact opposite, okay? So if I'm in this position here, and I retract and I pull back and I fire this arm directly straight back along the line, well, the complementary move of going directly straight back, the opposite of straight back is straight forward, okay? And if I keep everything working along this central line here, then what happens is now when I go to release, I'm going to release the ball the truest way possible that I can to be directly over the line, okay? And if A equals B and B equals C, then A and C are equal, right? So if everything that I do works along the line, then I should have the ball end up where the line ends. And in the beginning of this segment, we talked about this line where it starts and stops. So in this example, our line is ending in the chest of the guy that we're throwing to, right? So in essence, if I'm standing here, okay, and I'm working along the line, our visual reference should be the chest of the guy that we're throwing to. Now, when it boils down to it, and I'm trying to get into a truer mechanic for throwing down to the bases, the truth is, the only difference between what I'm doing now and what I'm going to be doing in the game is a squat, okay? Now, we'll get into the details of stance and setup later on, but the truth is when I'm squatting down in this position here, the idea is that I want my jab foot to get to the center part of my body, okay, which is my balance point, and then from here, we're going to separate, get into a position to throw, and then continue the path and follow through, okay? So that, in a nutshell, is the straight line theory, okay? And everything that we want to try to do revolves around being on this line as much as we can be. Why? Because what does the line represent? The line represents two key characteristics of a really good thrower. It represents quickness and it represents accuracy via the pathway of balance and body control, right? So using this concept, you can establish yourself a reproducible mechanic that allows you to be able to get into a good rhythm for throwing, okay? Now, that's the baseline concept of the throwing motion, okay, using the straight line theory. So what happens if you're an older high school guy, because I get a lot of high school guys that come to me, they want to work on their mechanics, they want to work on their throwing, their accuracy, their quickness. You get a lot of guys that are, hey, you know, Jeff, can you increase my pop time? Can you get it better? Can you do this, that, and the other? There's another key equation that we want to discuss to throw into the mix. Okay, and we've all heard the algebraic expression before, that distance equals rate times time. Okay, well, we can solve for the rate variable, be it that you are what you are at that present moment. Okay, and a lot of us could get a little faster, let's be honest, but at the end of the day, your rate is a constant in the moment. However, a couple things can change, in particularly the distance variable, okay? So what I like to do is I like to equate distance equaling time. And for a lot of my young catchers they really get a good understanding of what we're talking about, because when we break things down visually as to what distance looks like and equate it to time, it makes a whole world of difference, okay? So remember when we talked about the line being in the center of my body, okay? The center of my body representing the balance point. The truth of the matter is, I know when I was really young, one of the main philosophies of throwing to the bases was the L theory, right? You make an L. This foot replaces this foot, and this foot goes straight forward, okay? And to be honest with you, look, that might work for a lot of people, okay? But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to argue the fact that if someone is using those mechanics, I don't care how fast you are. I mean, you can get the ball down there in 1.9 or 1.8. If your foot is traveling beyond the center point, you're actually adding more time, more distance to your throw, because you're adding more time to your throw because you're adding more distance, okay? The key to getting rid of the ball is covering the least amount of distance possible in order to establish yourself to make that throw. And the truth is that when you have 2 points that are a certain distance apart, okay, it's gonna be faster if both ends work and meet in the middle, as opposed to having one end come all the way over to the other end before that end has the ability to advance, okay? So using this straight theory, a lot of times I get catchers that come to me and they want to pop up, and the first thing they want to do is slide this foot all the way over here. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why don't you just cut out that extra motion? Because if you're looking at me here in relationship to this line, all right, the distance between this line to this foot, I mean, roughly speaking, you're looking at least 12 to 14 inches. Well, the reality is that distance equals a certain amount of time, right? And if you all know, I mean, this is nothing, groundbreaking. The difference between elite throwers and just good throwers are tenths of seconds, right? I mean, when you consider, somebody who throws 2-0, when I was playing at the time, that was major league average, right? It might be a little different now, but at the end of the day, if you had a guy who threw 2-0 and you had a guy who was a 1.8 constantly, right? That 0.2 of a second, that makes a world of difference in regards to the value of this guy over here, right? Even more so now because of the new pickoff rules that are in place in professional baseball, which is a totally different topic. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but at the end of the day, now we got to be even faster to get the ball down to the bases, okay? So the truth is that using this concept and working everything towards the center not only will help you establish a quickest distance between 2 points, but it can also be a way of identifying certain problems that exist in a throw, okay? And the biggest thing that I always come across initially with a lot of my older catchers, they all want to decrease their times to second base. They want to go from 2.4 to 2.2. They want to go from 2.2 to 2.0. They want to go from 2.0 to 1.8, right? But a lot of times they don't pay attention to the distance that they're creating throughout the course of their mechanics, okay? And the number one thing that usually is one of the biggest culprits is that they don't identify the distance that they're traveling with their initial first step, okay? They want to come all the way across when the truth is that they don't need to travel that much. Because the moment this foot reestablishes itself, you have the ability to start that mechanical process much sooner, okay? And I know what a lot of you guys are thinking, well, why don't I just take that step out altogether? Okay, why don't I go from my knees, or why don't I just, rotate and throw? So the other big thing about this straight line theory is it starts to identify other mechanical functions or problems, if you will, all right, as we continue to go along. So the big issue too is, when we wind up getting a guy who swings this way, all right, ultimately his body weight starts to shift into where his other leg is over on this side. And then as they go to throw, sometimes you'll get guys that overcompensate and close themselves off a little too much, okay? Well, like I said earlier, what one side of my body does, the other side's gonna do the exact opposite, okay? So if I take this front side and I create somewhat of a rotational movement on the front side and I swing this way, well, the opposite of a rotation over on this side is rotational over here, okay? And many a times what happens is when guys spin, they become rotational, they're no longer linear. What happens is they slingshot this arm all the way out here, and then naturally, everyone pronates when they throw. But what happens for a guy whose body weight is going this way and his arm's going this way, that pronation takes place a little bit more offline, and now the throw is up the line where the shortstop is coming to put a tag on. He's running into the guy sliding in the second base, okay? Well, that's a mechanical failure when it comes down to it, because you're actually spinning and you're losing your alignment. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking right now. Oh, well, you know, we can actually see guys in the big leagues that, you know, they spin, they rotate and throw. Listen, I'm not saying that this is the only way to do it, but I will tell you that in years past, dealing with a lot of young players and young catchers, rotational throwing does lead into a lot of mechanical failures, okay? It also creates very inconsistent results. And if we have the ability to try to straighten that mechanical motion out, and we're working more in line, you're gonna create more consistent, more accurate throws, especially to second base, to all the bases really, okay? Now, let me back up one more step just so that I can get this point across as well too. The arm action, okay? Very, very important here. One of my biggest things that I see a lot when it comes down to young catchers is they fail to understand the concept of the straight line theory, but in a much smaller format, is when we take the ball out of the glove, a lot of times I get a longer arm action with my throwers when they're trying to pull that arm back to get to the throwing position. They make more of a longer arm action, which ultimately is taking more time, okay? But more importantly, it's messing up the timing and the rhythm with my legs. Remember, we equated the upper body and the lower body like a dance with dance partners, right? Well, when one dance partner makes a short, quick step and the other one takes a longer step, it can throw the entire rhythm off. And now the dance looks choppy, okay? So what we mainly need to be able to do is we mainly need to be able to coordinate the timing between the upper body, the upper hand, the hands, and the lower half, okay? If my feet are working in short jab steps, I can't have a longer arm action. It's not gonna work, okay? I'm not gonna be able to get my hand up in time to make it where my feet are getting set in order to throw, okay? Longer arm action doesn't work with quick steps, with quick footwork, okay? So the idea behind the catching throwing style is no different than, let's say, an infielder, okay? We want to be short and quick to get to that throwing position. What is the quickest distance between 2 points again? Straight line. So if I take the ball out of my glove at the center point and I go directly to my throwing position here with no wasted space, or wasted distance, I should say, now I have a better opportunity for me to be able to match up my upper half with my lower half. And if I can do that, then my throw is gonna be a little bit more in line, but it's also gonna be more accurate because the timing matches, okay? So many times I go in and I start fixing problems with young throwers because their arm action doesn't match the footwork. And that's the big key that we want to try to take away, in addition to the straight line theory, is we got to get the arm action to match the footwork. So if you're a coach out there and you're watching and you've got some young catching, young throwers who are catchers, and even for infielders, I'll go on the record as saying that I think it's very effective for infielding as well. The one thing that you want to try to get across to them when they're making their throws is try to not have the wrist and the ball break below shoulder plane. Okay, now this is probably a point that can be argued back and forth, but in the years of working with catchers, I've seen better results from the players who are able to establish their wrist and the ball above the shoulder plane as they retract back, okay? And then have the wrist stay above the elbow the whole time, okay? I know some guys like to come back and get to this position here. My problem with that, and I know there are going to be some guys out there that are watching the video that would be like, okay, let's argue that point. My problem with that is that if I'm going to retract my elbows as far back as they're going to be, and then I'm in this position here, I still have to get up. I still have to externally rotate this excess amount of distance to get into a proper throwing position in order to be able to make a proper throw. So why not try to take care of that problem as the elbow is traveling back, okay? We can keep the wrist above the elbow as best we can. Now, obviously, everything is subject to where you're catching the ball. I get that. But in a best case scenario, we're going to make that exchange. When we make that exchange, look at the position of my wrist and my elbow already. So now, as I go to bring back, if I can maintain that position here and retract my scapula by separating my elbows, I've already kind of ironed out one move. And the more moves that I can kind of iron out as this whole process is taking place, the quicker and faster the ball is going to get down to second base because we're eliminating the excess motion of the throw. Okay? So at this moment, I'm going to wrap things up. I want to be respectful of your time. I know that was probably a little bit longer than I anticipated, but at the end of the day, all of this information can be applied in a very good controlled setting when you're warming up, right? So if you want, keep the phone in your back pocket, coaches. You know, if you want to whip it out as a reference, might be more than happy to, or just use it as a little bit of a guide to help you. But when it's all said and done, for 20 years I've been working with catchers, and I've had the fortunate ability to take the information that I learned in the almost 10 seasons of playing professionally, working with some of the best catching instructors that are out there, kind of make a collaboration of all of this information and be able to pass it on to the next generation of catchers. So if you found value in this video, I appreciate it. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up. Let everybody know what we're doing. If you want, share it, like it, subscribe to the YouTube channels. You can go to the Catching Clinic YouTube channel. We're going to be filling that up over time with some tutorial videos. I got a couple already right now. We're going to be building that library up as we continue to go along. And if you have any questions, feel free to direct message me. I love answering questions. I love learning new ways. So if you're somebody who's watching this who can, help a brother out and give me some more information, kind of steer me if you have something that you want to contest, you want to talk about, I'm always up for learning. It's just like this. We're just like players in this situation. The day you stop learning is the day you need to get out of this game, So once again, I want to thank everybody for listening. And before we get out of here, want to show you guys one little drill. Okay, it's got two parts to it. And, you're seeing a lot of these little portable bands that you can easily throw in your bat bag or whatnot throughout the course of a year, a season, and these are really good for helping to condition certain muscles for catchers more specifically than anything else out there, right? And so one of the drills that I like to do with my young catchers to help them identify the proper footwork and the throwing motion is we'll take these little bands and we'll put them around our ankles, okay? And then these are lighter resistance bands, okay? You can put them around your hands as well too. And what we like to do is get them to identify a line and put them in a position here so that what they can do is they can work on their throwing motion and they can work here, here, right? And you can have them look down and check. Now, if you look at them down and they're offline a little bit, Okay. Well, now we can reset. All right, let's reset and let's try to get more online, right? So we're here. Boom. Okay. That seems to be just a little bit better. Okay. Now that's just for the legs. For the upper half, what we're working on here is while our lower half is working on getting stronger, what we can do with the upper half is we work on that scapular retraction, that separation of the elbows, the separation of the wrist, okay? But we're also working on making sure that we're properly aligned. And if you do this right, it's not a perfect scenario, but if you do this right, what you're gonna see is you're gonna see more of a line that's shooting directly towards the base that you're trying to throw to, okay? So, just a little drill that you can do with your young catchers. I even do them with some of my older guys, all right? And, you know, like I said, if you have any questions or whatnot, you can always feel free to reach out to us, direct message us or whatnot. But I appreciate your time. Everyone, please stay safe, stay clean. And if you know someone who's out there on the front lines doing their things to make our world a better place and a safer place, I know you can't give them a hug, give them a kiss or whatever, but hey, shoot them a text, send them some encouragement, let them know you're thinking about them and caring for them. I know not all of us can get out there. We're not all equipped to be able to go out there and save the lives that these people are saving, but you know, you at least tell them how much you appreciate them. So thank you very much for your attention and look forward to catching you guys up in the future. All right.